In this video, I'm going to go over how to apply puppet pins. And I'm going to show you two different ways of doing this just because there's a couple different things you can do. So here I have a shirt that is masked out. It is just a Photoshop layer I brought in or Photoshop image. And to puppet pin, this allows you to control specific elements of an image to animate them or just move them around or stretch them out. And we saw this earlier inside Illustrator, but if you go to the puppet pin tool at the top, this allows you to place pins in your image where you want them to both stay still and move. So here, because I want to keep certain parts of this still, I'm going to place pins where I want it to stay still and pins where I want it to move. So for example, I've put them across this image, and if you want to see how this looks, you can click on the mesh and you can see the sort of mesh that it creates. And every time you add one, it adds more complication to the image, and you can do Control Z to undo. I'm going to go to my arrow tool, and here you can see that when I click and drag on a specific one, I can then stretch it and make it move around. And because the other ones are in place up here, this allows me to keep these controlled. I can also select multiple, so I'm holding down Shift, and now those are all moving together. And you'll see that when they encounter another one, they'll fold in on itself. Now, if you want to animate these, you can click on one, press U to drop down the mesh menu, or you can twirl down the mesh, twirl down to form, and you'll see all the puppet pins. And when you scroll forward, you'll see that they're all here. And that's why I suggest pressing U, because it becomes a lot easier just to be able to see your separate puppet pins. So if I want to move this one around, I can then say go up, jump forward, go down, come back over here, go over, come over here, go over. And now if I jump backwards, because I stretch these out at a really long period of time, it's going to go very slowly. So I can select all of these, hold down Alt or Option, and then drag them together to make it go a little bit more quickly. And now we'll see that move. Still going really slowly. Drag these a little bit closer. Zoom into our timeline. So you can kind of negotiate this as you're going along. And it is rendering, so it's going a little bit more slowly than you might see. There we go. But one other thing you can do is, if you delete these ones, is if you hold down Control or Command and you click on your image, you'll see that it will start this timer. What that was doing was recording my movement. So I'm going to click on one, hold down Control and Command, and then wiggle around my mouse. So now you'll see that, here we go, I'm going to undo that just real quick. Click Control or Command, and then, or hold down Control and Command, and then we can move it around. And you'll see it records all of these different movements inside there. And I'm going to drop this down to a third just so we can see this a little bit, render a little bit faster. Now, if you want to smooth this out, what you can do is, again, press U to see all of these, select all of your keyframes, go to Window and Smoother, or you may see it on the side over here open already. And then I'm going to drop the tolerance, or move the tolerance up to, something like 13, press OK, and you'll see it simplifies that down. I could bring this up even more. You'll see that it simplifies this path down. So we'll get something a lot more smoother. It's a path that's much smoother than what we had before. And then you can go back and do a different side. So now that that one's stretching that way, I can come up here and you'll see these happen at the same time. In this way, like if you want to make fabric sort of fold or go down, this is something you could apply to it. There's also a different type of puppet pin that you can do, and I'm just deleting out my puppet effect. If you click and hold, you will see the Puppet Advanced Pin tool, and when you click and click and click and click and click, this also allows for rotation. So here, when I click inside, you'll see that when I hover, I then have the ability to rotate inside here, and you can see the different degrees. So if you want a little bit more control, this is another way to go. You can also scale up or scale down. So if you want to like get bigger or smaller, this is another way you could go. But I want to show one more tool with the puppet pin tool. And that is if you are using an example where you have objects that are close to each other. So this is a comet that is made out of Illustrator marks, and there's transparent space between each of these lines. Now, when I put a puppet pin on this, for example, so this element already has a glow attached, so I'm actually going to need to do one thing. So I'm going to click on my image, and I'm going to go back to my regular puppet pin, and you'll see that it has my object selected, and this is nice because there's enough separation between those elements. Click here, click, 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 and click, because I want to be able to control each of those, and maybe I want that to be controlled inside there. And now you'll see a couple things. Let's look at the effects, and you'll see that Puppet is below my glow effect that I've applied. See how it's breaking the glow? So to fix that, I need to move my puppet above the glow effect. But even still, do you see that it's leaving some of the end marks there? So what I want to do is check one more box. And this is the box for on transparent. And when I do this, it fixes it. So on transparent recognizes that when an element has transparency, it's going to apply a slightly different puppet pin to it that's a little bit more corrected for something like this. I think it's a little bit more energy intensive, but it'll work better. And I'm just going to go back a couple steps just so these are straight. And let's do on transparent again. And now when I do something like, I'm going to hold down Control and I want these to move around. I'm going to jump back. Let's do this one. And I'm going to jump back. Let's do this one. Just trying to get these kind of even. Notice that it sets me back at the beginning of time here. Select this one. Select this one. And select this one. And you can apply loops on these if you want. It's up to you, and do this one. So now when I zoom out, and let's look at this just normally, we'll get something that feels like it's actually sort of moving through space. I'd want to repeat those so that they constantly are moving. With a sort of looping background with something on top, you can get something kind of neat.